my parents separated, our dad said we were only to call him by his first name, Mort, since he felt he was more of a friend to us than a father. He wanted his kids to reflect his new hippie lifestyle, which meant abdicating from anything establishment related, jobs, taxes, laws, and traditional roles, including parenting, which is ironic considering he was a child development professor before he left our mom and us. The summer I was 13 and my brother Steve was 12, we squished into Mort's small rented house in San Francisco, made smaller by his friends and former students who dropped by, crashed for a few days, trading joints, nickel and dime bags of pot, and tabs of LSD. A couple of weeks before we flew back to our mom's, Mort decided to take us camping in Baja California. We were game to go, as it meant we would get him all to ourselves except for his 25-year-old girlfriend, Carla, who had actually been a student of his. One of his friends was a young Mexican guy named Pepe. He had family in San Felipe and on the eastern side of the Baja Peninsula and was going down there to visit later that summer. He was one of Mort's closest friends, so much so that when Mort bought a small step van, he gave Pepe his Ford Comet convertible, probably because it didn't fit into the hippie look. Pepe left for San Felipe a week before us in the red sports car with the white top folded down, his long black hair waving at us as he turned the corner at the bottom of the hill. The old delivery van needed fixing up before we hit the road. Mort named the van Samantha. To make her trip worthy, he declared that she needed a loft bed and a compact wood-burning stove. The stark walls looked too industrial for Mort, so he bought some carpet scraps and a big bucket of glue. In typical Tom Sawyer fashion, he played up the fun of cutting the carpet scraps with X-Acto knives and gluing them on the walls. "You can make any design you want. I got lots of different colors, so go for it, man," he said as he handed Steve and me the knives and the glue. I struggled with going along with Mort's demand to decorate the van. It seemed more like a chore than an art project, but I didn't want to upset him, so I feigned enthusiasm and sloppily stuck carpet scraps to the walls. We loaded the van with camping supplies and headed south. Mort thought picking up hitchhikers was good karma. What goes around comes around, he believed, so we stopped and picked up almost every hitchhiker we saw. Pot, I assumed, was the hitchhiker's currency. Every hitchhiker asked Mort if it was okay to smoke, which, of course, it was. As joints and pipes made their rounds, I'd pass them along to the next hitchhiker without taking a hit. I thought the dizzy, lightheaded feeling I got every time the van filled up with skunk-smelling smoke was car sickness. Yeah, right. We crossed the border at Mexicali and drove south to San Felipe. Setting up camp meant parking Samantha on a deserted part of the beach. Steve and I went down to the water while Mort and Carla made a big pot of spaghetti for dinner. Pepe and a couple of his friends came by that evening in the red convertible. Steve and I rolled out our sleeping bags on the sand, climbed in, and fell asleep while the adults talked and toked all night long. The next day, we drove to town to stock up on provisions. As soon as we parked Samantha, one of Pepe's friends ran up to us and said that Pepe had been arrested. The cops apparently needed a reason to question the long-haired Mexican with the fancy car, so they drummed up a law that said it was illegal to own a convertible. We went to the police station to find out the real story. The police station was more of a storefront office than an actual station. A couple of cops sat on plastic chairs on the sidewalk. I noticed their pistols strapped to their belts and felt like we were in trouble already, even though we had done nothing wrong. Neither Mort nor Carla spoke much Spanish, and only one officer spoke broken English. We found out that when they pulled Pepe over, they searched his car and found marijuana. Pepe told them the car had been recently given to him, and he wasn't aware of the pot. When the officer learned that Mort was the person who gave Pepe the car, they held him for questioning too. Mort tried to assure us that it was just procedure and they would let him go as soon as they got all the information they wanted. He asked Carla to take us to a cafe for lunch. I reluctantly followed her up the street, feeling anxious leaving him there, hoping that after lunch we could all be reunited and resume our vacation. When we returned to the station, the police would not let us talk to Mort, even though we could see him behind the large front desk. He raised up a reassuring hand as if to tell us to just be patient, it'll all work out. But there was something unsettling in his look. Carla walked us down the street and around the corner to talk to us out of earshot of the police. She said she had never babysat before and didn't know what to do. Then her eyes popped with panic. She hurried us a little farther up the sidewalk and told us to go back to the van to find the drugs she and Mort had brought from California. Why Carla didn't choose this to do herself, I have no idea. Our job was to get the drugs and hide them somewhere on the beach as quickly and as stealthily as possible, or we would all be in big trouble if the police decided to search the van. Memorizing the places she told us to look, Steve and I walked back to Samantha as nonchalantly as possible. I felt hyper awake and a little excited being on this grown-up mission, like we were in a detective movie. I looked forward to telling my 8th grade classmates about how to hide drugs in Mexico. We climbed into Samantha and slid the door shut. I looked behind the wood-burning stove and the pile of kindling and found the hash pipe and small inlaid wooden box of hashish. Before stuffing them in my shorts pocket, I took a whiff of the pipe bowl. Of everything Mort smoked, I thought hash smelled the best. Steve found the bags of rolled joints behind the stack of books. Digging into the oatmeal container, I found the black film canister containing the prized window pane acid. Steve and I put everything back as it was, so in case the police came in, it would all look normal. He straightened up the books, and I put the oatmeal container back in the food box. We filled our pockets with all the goods and grabbed a couple of towels. We walked quickly to the beach, but not too quickly, trying not to draw any attention. Looking back at Samantha, I noticed the police car slow down as it turned the corner, heading our way. The 2 cops in the car watched us. I nudged Steve to hurry. The police car paced us. We scurried up the beach, pretending to look for a decent place to lay our towels. We whispered about where to hide the drugs. It had to be somewhere completely out of sight, but I insisted that it had to be a place we could find again. I wanted Mort to be proud of us that we could lead him back to the spot to retrieve his stash. Steve spotted some driftwood logs farther up the beach and away from people. We laid out our towels near the logs, and I looked back to see the police followed us. We were clear. Steve and I climbed behind a log and started digging a hole in the sand with our bare hands. We tried to look like we were just building a tunnel and not burying a treasure. Once the stash was in the ground, we grabbed our towels and went back to town to find Carla, hoping Mort had been freed. She was waiting for us down the street from the police station, anxiously pacing, alone. I knew that this was no longer a vacation. We hurried to the station, but Mort was not there. They had transported him and Pepe to the real jail in Mexicali. It was dark when Carla, Steve, and I returned to our makeshift camp. Under the glow of Samantha's headlights, we gathered up our sleeping bags, cookware, and other things. Carla drove the 2 hours to the border and checked us into a cheap motel on the American side in Calexico. It was a long and quiet trip without Mort in the driver's seat. The next morning, Carla called her parents to wire money so she could hire a lawyer to get Mort released. When he was freed 3 days later, he looked 10 years older. He had lost weight and was wearing someone else's old clothes. When I hugged him, he smelled terrible. He seemed different, distant, like when he was stoned, but sadder. I thought he should be happy to be free, to see us. I missed the pre-prisoned Mort. Pepe fared worse. The lawyer Carla hired simply left town with the rest of the money, and Pepe spent a year behind bars. He was never charged with a crime. During the year Pepe spent in jail, Mort wrote to him. I think Mort felt guilty that he was free and Pepe was not. Mort started his letters with the salutation, "Love saves the day," meaning that he had stuck the stamp to the envelope with a drop of liquid LSD. Pepe would eat the stamp and maybe the whole envelope, anticipating a temporary escape from the hellhole he inhabited. After the lawyer absconded with the money, we headed north. We drove all the way to San Francisco without picking up a single hitchhiker.